I hope FreightGuard doesn't watch this show.
And what does that mean? What does it mean that the company is always ready for audits?
Don't panic, most likely. Don't panic because fear and panic are bad advisors during audits.
Olesya, and finally, what would you wish for our viewers?
I would recommend hiring safe drivers and professional safety managers.
Hello, dear subscribers. We continue our channel, and today we have a wonderful safety manager, Olesei Kabak, with extensive experience in safety. And Olesya started her career in this industry about 5.5 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, and for about 4 years, you've been working directly as a safety manager and leading a team. And accordingly, we will ask you all the interesting questions about how important safety is for a trucking company, for the trucking industry, how companies go out of business if they don't comply with safety. And we'll talk about the new changes with these laws, how it has affected, how it has impacted the trucking industry. That is, how to properly hire a driver, and most importantly, how to properly form a safety culture in your company to not go out of business. Hello, Olesya.
Hello. Hello, that's right. I've been with AIST Safety for 5 years, and honestly, I can't quite imagine myself without AIST. And AIST Safety Consulting is not just my job, it's a part of me, a part of my family. I'm very glad that I work in such a wonderful company.
Thank you for finding the time. I know you're very busy because you and your team work with many hundreds of drivers. So it's hard to find even a free minute, but nevertheless, we decided to steal you from your team and talk to you about important topics. And probably we'll start with the most pressing question of today.
Yes, and the most pressing question is, how have these new legislations affected the hiring of drivers? Has the number of drivers decreased? How are companies affected, or are they not affected? In other words, what changes are currently happening in the trucking industry?
Well, I probably want to start with the importance of safety in the trucking business. Previously, it seemed like now everything has changed. By the way, I associate this with the fact that laws regarding the trucking industry have become stricter and that our government's attention to the trucking business has become more focused. But some time ago, there was an impression that for company owners, safety was not very important. For them, the departments that were directly related to money, accounting, dispatchers were important, and safety was something secondary. But that's a very big mistake. Sometimes it got to the point where the owners themselves were handling safety without understanding anything about it and not knowing DOT laws. The main thing was that the accountant was a professional, the dispatcher was good, and safety was somehow on the back burner. But that's a very huge mistake, I believe. And now our government has proven it, that everyone should pay attention to safety, because the safety of the company in general, the safety department of the company, as I see it, is the roots of the company, which of course are quiet, unnoticed, but they nourish the company. And you can grow a huge rich tree, but if the roots are weak, any storm will topple it. Likewise with safety, if the foundations are shaky, any danger can put the company out of business.
What does safety actually do? Yes, we can ask that. It's on our agenda. What does safety actually do? Well, you mentioned those companies that are at odds with it. I think there are still such companies. And only now with these rules, as you say, they are finally remember. Oh, do we really need this? Come on, give me a break. They've tightened it so much. What an unfair government. Although this has always been the case, they just ignored it. And now it's like everything is already in place. That is, they have already cornered them, these owners, these companies, and now it's really necessary to play by the rules, which is very important.
Yes, control has undoubtedly increased. And yes, then please tell us what exactly your team does, what safety is, because for many, unfortunately, it's such an abstract concept.
Not exactly. Yes, many people think that safety is everything, that it's about handling insurance, calculating IFTAs, transferring salaries to drivers, and so on. So it's a large complex type of service, especially if the company is small, which is natural, because safety involves certain specific but very important functions. So you come to work, that is, you've been working at this job for many years, and you come to work every day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., yes, from Monday to Friday. That is, it's an immediate part of your job and you do it every day. So tell us how it's all organized from the inside and how you organize safety for trucking companies.
You know, my relatives who are not here in America, they are outside the United States. They are not involved in the trucking business. They don't even know what trucking is. Ask, Olesei, what does the company you work for do? And I have a favorite expression that I use to answer this question and say it at company meetings. I always tell the team, do you understand what we do? We save companies. And probably our viewers might ask, what does saving companies mean? It sounds like some kind of pompous expression, but it's absolutely not pompous. It's true. Why do we save? Because a driver is not just an employee, they are a key figure in the company, in a trucking company. Everything revolves around them. And the well-being of the company depends on what kind of driver they are, their discipline, their behavior on the road. So we, the safety department, are connected with this driver, the key figure in trucking, from hiring to the moment they leave the company. And hiring a driver is the point where it all begins. And hiring a safe driver is our priority. That is to read their record, to read it correctly, to see in the record what non-professionals won't see, and thereby protect the company from hiring a dangerous driver, an unsafe driver who in the end might cause an accident or lead the company to some financial collapse.
Can I quickly ask a question? And the fact that we constantly say this, we warn our clients, but how dramatic is it? And is it true that one driver can put the whole company out of business, especially if the company is small or medium-sized? But even large companies can also face very severe, serious consequences.
I mean, can one driver put the company out of business?
He might be involved in an accident, be responsible for some terrible incident that will lead to huge consequences for the company, both financially and in all areas of the trucking business. And the company might face audits. It's a very frightening situation.
Well, many might argue here, okay, we can't insure ourselves completely. Any driver can get into an accident, but there are probably some signs, right? Some red flags, meaning you can't be 100% insured against an accident.
But probably a lot can be done to prevent it. Of course, a lot. And it all starts with hiring drivers. That is, you can read those red flags in their record that indicate to us that it's better not to hire such a driver. And our clients, our company can confirm that for us, verifying a driver is not just about saying approved or not approved. Even if we do not approve this driver, but the company, the owner of the company, still decides to hire him, we call the owner, we persuade them, providing arguments about what might happen if they hire such a driver. And it all starts from there. There have been cases when such drivers were hired, and as a result, this driver got into some unpleasant situation for the company.
Olesei, you say that one driver can take the whole company out of business, but also one driver can take all the legislation out of business, or rather completely change the political structure of a country. That is what happened against the backdrop of these political movements, Trump's policies. And plus, there was the accident with that Indian driver who was involved in a terrible accident, after which laws began to tighten and so on. So it was just another drop in the bucket. So how important is it? What should you pay attention to? The most important question, that is, when you hire a driver, you said you look at their resume, and resume is their MVR, motor vehicle report, and there are some, you say, their red flags. So could you briefly explain, when you hire a driver, how do you conduct such a thorough screening to avoid terrible drivers who might completely ruin your business and career in the trucking industry? What should you pay attention to? What are the criteria?
Firstly, on the driver's experience, and secondly, of course, on violations.
And what kind of experience should it be?
Well, we recommend no less than a year or more. Less than a year is already a relatively unsafe driver. On their violations, on the number of violations, especially on violations related to unsafe driving. That is what can lead to accidents. On the number, of course, of violations, everything is considered in aggregate. You know, every driver is very individual. They may have more violations, but also a huge amount of experience, for example. Or it's some absolutely young driver and they have a lot of violations. We certainly do not recommend such a driver at all. But I can't say there are such standards now. It's all very individual. You just have to come to us.
That's without a doubt. But if you compare, for example, with insurance, insurance has very strict restrictions. They have certain rules. That is, many insurances require experience of no less than 2 years, only a small number of road violations, and so on. But besides all this, that is, we take into account insurance requirements. What the insurance requires, plus we also look at the characteristics of this driver, meaning we also consider what kind of person he is, right?
Of course, of course. We already have such experience that we don't even need the insurance characteristics. The insurance requirements are not needed, because if they pass with us, then they will definitely pass with the insurance. We have many companies with different insurance agencies which have different requirements. So we've noticed that drivers we don't approve also don't pass the insurance criteria.
And such a question arose just when we were talking with the insurance agent. How do we treat drivers who have truck driving experience not in the USA, but in the country the driver came from? How do we consider them?
We do not consider their experience not in the country, not in the USA, no. It's a completely different driving culture, different rules. Therefore, for us, experience abroad is not the same as experience in America.
Have you ever had cases where a driver seemed to fit perfectly, meeting all the criteria with enough experience, good English, and a clean record, but for some reason you didn't hire them?
Of course, by the way they communicate with us. Yes, we communicate with the driver, with drivers, and if we see that their communication style is simply unacceptable, we report this to owners and say that we no longer trust them because certain issues were identified, not necessarily violations, but not quite proper communication with us. And if they allow themselves to communicate with us in such a manner, believe me, they will communicate with you the same way and you will have problems. And most often the owners listen to it.
Yes, because they represent the company, meaning this driver is the face of your trucking company. If they are rude to the shipper or receiver during delivery, it will cause big problems.
Of course, yes.
In other words, everything starts, the safety work begins long before hiring a driver. This selection, filtering out problematic drivers, is one of the most important components.
Next, we introduce this, as I like to say, key figure, very important for the trucking business. We introduce and accompany them throughout their journey in the company in accordance with DOT rules. This is very important. And we are always there with the drivers, sometimes quietly unnoticed, but we are there. And this unnoticed presence prevents the company from certain problems.
Yes, by the way, I've heard a lot from our clients too, that they don't even know something yet, but we already know it. They ask, how do you know? Do you have some connections with FMCSA or the federal government? No, we just keep track of all these federal programs and so on. I also wanted to note that we had such a call. I remember it very well. It was from our client, and he said that he would renew the contract with us only if we don't let Olesei go anywhere, meaning she must always be with us. And I was surprised. I said, okay, but everyone works very well in our company and so on. He said, no, Olesei hears me. And this hears me really struck me. I said, what do you mean? He said that she is fully present in the conversation. She feels everything, understands everything, gets so involved in the situation that I feel completely safe. And besides getting involved in situations, he said that you give them a forecast. And this really calms him down. So you give him you give him a setup of what will happen. He says, if I do this and that, how will it affect 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? What will happen to my business? And this forecast is important, and I would like to know, many ask, what characteristics should a good safety manager have in a company? I believe that this is the best characteristic when you truly hear the client. Olesei, what do you think? What other characteristics should the safety manager have? Starting with the first one.
First, the safety manager and the team that handles your safety, I believe, should be located in the United States. They should be located in the United States because people who live in the United States live in this culture. They follow the laws. They keep track of the laws, implement these laws in their work. They do not break the laws. They fear responsibility. And this is the first important thing. And for the owners who hire safety managers or consulting companies. Next, the safety manager must be experienced. The manager who runs your company must be experienced. You should entrust your company to experienced hands, meaning you must be confident because the owner doesn't know DOT rules. They don't know them, and I've met such owners who handled safety themselves without understanding anything. I've already talked about this. For them, it was enough that the driver passed the drug test, and that was sufficient. This is a big misconception. The safety manager must be experienced. This is one of the main rules.
What makes a manager experienced? So, does the safety manager have to undergo some kind of federal audits?
You see, everything I want to say now, I want to connect it with us. Because yes, experience comes with what? With situations you learn from, audits, with various situations that occur in the company. How do we resolve these situations? We connect with DOT, with different structures in the business. We find solutions to problems, and that's how we gain experience. And audits also help us a lot in this because we go through a large number of audits and communicate directly with DOT inspectors who teach us, help us, advise us. So yes.
But okay, if a driver suits us, then what's next? In terms of character, what qualities are important for a safety manager?
Well, as I believe my teaching background probably helped me because I was a teacher in my country. I worked with children and I know how to work with people. I worked with children, with parents, and I know how to work with people, how to talk, how to calm them down. And if the owner of the company called me with some problem, as Anastasia rightly said, I always delve into this problem. And I try to understand it and help, and I teach our team to behave the same way towards companies. That is, for some reason, there was an impression that consulting was about, well, came, consulted, checked the documents, and left. No, AIST Safety is not about that. It's about involvement in the company. We live with the owners, we live with their drivers, we live with their problems and their safety. Therefore, it is very important.
Yes, sometimes I encounter such questions, or I come to the office and I hear them talking about completely different topics with the drivers. That is, they talk about some issues that are not related to federal laws, audits, and direct work. For example, a driver didn't pay some parking ticket. Yes, maybe it's related, but the driver might be sued by someone. And this legal proceeding is not even related to our activities, but for example, his wife is suing him for some alimony and so on. So this is a completely different area of law that we don't deal with. But I hear that our people still participate in these.
Absolutely right. Just recently, I had such a case. A driver called me. We were discussing company issues. It was the owner of the company. He called me about company issues, and he said a phrase that he was very tired. He had problems. His son had surgery, and I got involved. We talked, and I somehow calmed him down. It all captivates people. The owner feels that we are not just consulting. We are people who do our job not like, I don't know, not like robot. But like people, yes.
Yes, I hear that quite often.
Yes, and we've even had situations where, for example, a driver got into an accident and our safety manager was there to support the driver. This means he was on the phone with him from the moment of the accident, and our manager was the first person he called, staying in touch with him. The police arrived, he listened to the entire conversation, he participated, helped him, calmed him down, and so on. Until the police left, it was some kind of emotional support for the driver, and it lasted about 2 hours. Yes. Yes, we are even capable of that. We do this. We don't leave drivers behind. Well, if we're talking about consulting, about what I mentioned earlier, yes. If necessary, we will stay on the phone with the driver for 2 hours and provide them with the support they need.
Yes, we have the resources for that.
Well, with many companies, our first point of contact is an audit. Either companies come to us that already have a federal audit or an in-house safety audit, or a company wants to check how well their safety measures are organized and asks us to conduct a mock audit. A mock audit is not a real audit, it's just that we're hired to check the documentation. So could you tell us what are the most common or the most serious violations or omissions that your team encounters in such situations?
I don't know if this can be said. No, I won't name the companies, but I want to say that the biggest and most complex audits for us were in companies where safety was outsourced. Yes. Why? Because safety was handled completely incorrectly, not according to DOT laws. Huge mistakes were made that could have been avoided if safety had been entrusted to professionals. And such mistakes are very difficult to correct later. Therefore,
And some cannot be corrected, right?
Well, for example, if someone knows little about what safety and documentation are, what kind of mistakes might there be that cannot be fixed or are very difficult to correct?
Well, I can talk about what we can prevent. For example, seeing something in the company that a manager might not notice. I mean, the company manager, the owner of the company. Out of service, for example. When a truck is put out of service for some reason, for example, due to the English language. And companies, they must understand that if a driver is put out of service for the English language, they are not allowed to continue driving. A driver who knows English must come and continue driving that truck. And we had an audit where we provided the auditor with lookbooks showing that one driver drove before the inspection and another driver who knows English drove after the inspection. The auditor called the second driver who took the truck. He just wanted to talk to him to see if he knew English. We had that happen.
And did he know English?
Yes, I knew.
Thank God.
Because we always tell companies that the driver who knows English should come and continue the journey, because that driver was put out of service for not knowing English. And so we know all these nuances, and we prevent, anticipate, and teach companies avoid making mistakes that could lead to poor ratings during an audit.
And besides the ratings, there's also the addition of hefty fines.
Yes.
But fines probably are not as terrifying, although yes, they are a huge financial burden because some fines can reach up to 200,000 and more, but it's more about the loss to the company. This affects more, yes. And also you probably mentioned drugs and alcohol. If the clearinghouse is not done on time, you can't get it back.
Absolutely. If it's not done in time, as I mentioned, the driver was hired not according to the DOT rules, and you can't change that. Especially when it comes to drugs and alcohol, you can't fix it. It's very difficult. And when companies come to us, by the way, engagement, when companies come to us and sign a contract, we start working with them not from the moment the contract is signed. No, we analyze all the company's work before us, everything that happened before us. We review all the drivers' files, all the folders. We check if the drivers were hired correctly before us. And if we find mistakes, we correct these mistakes, meaning we prepare companies for an audit. So even if some mistakes were made before us, we don't treat them as something that doesn't concern us because it happened before. No, we go back and fix everything and we move forward. And this doesn't just apply to drivers, it concerns the company's safety score. We review all inspections. For the last 3 years, we pass these inspections to our legal department for them to review and, if possible, remove them through data queue, also analyze all the safety score and so on.
And what directly affects the safety score? I mean, every company has this safety scale, right? So what is considered a good scale and what is a bad scale, roughly speaking, for our viewers who are hearing about this for the first time?
The higher the safety score, the worse it is for the company. What affects the safety score? Well, these key figures in the company influences the safety score because just as they bring money to the company, they also bring losses and raise the safety score, thereby causing major problems.
All right, a key figure. Maybe it's some kind of mismanagement, meaning they are running the company incorrectly. They don't know how to do it. That is, the company doesn't know the right way, and accordingly, they ignore this. Because I remember from my experience, I showed you several times companies where the owner didn't even know how to access and view their own security scale, which is completely open to everyone, meaning anyone can go and see it. It's open for public, but there are such owners who don't even know it exists. And what violations are there? And who caused this violation, whether it's for speeding and so on. So for a successful business in any trucking company, what qualifications should a safety manager have? A person who is responsible for the company's safety, the safety of people on the roads, drivers, first of all.
Well, they should be a professional. That's the first thing. And to be in America.
These are the 2 factors that a safety manager must possess for the company to feel secure.
Well, if, for example, I wanted to become a safety manager, not me specifically, but a person who has no experience in safety, maybe some experience in the industry, maybe in dispatch or somewhere else, how to break into being a safety manager.
And become a professional.
Become a professional?
Well, first of all, you need to take certain courses. For example, Anastasia has courses. Get trained. Join a team, a company where professionals work who will teach you, grow and become a good safety manager.
Yes, that's very valuable advice. And regarding these courses, many people take them not from the beginning, but already with experience as a safety manager to ensure that their existing knowledge aligns with the current industry standards. That's also very useful. And I think because I know that you are always educating yourself, yes, you constantly read laws, constantly learn something new. So this trait of your character, I think, distinguishes a good safety manager from a not so good one.
From the robot?
Yes, from the robot.
Well, yes, because there's always something to strive for. Everything changes, new laws, new rules come out. Again, we just talked about this, about the new rules regarding English, regarding non-domiciled CDL. By the way, returning to this question, I think we haven't answered it in detail yet, meaning, do you notice any changes in companies' work? Has the number of driver applicants decreased, or has the composition changed? For example, are more Americans being hired compared to migrant drivers, or are there any other changes?
Yes. Now, of course, it seems like everything has calmed down a bit, everyone has settled, but initially, yes, there was a lot of panic in the trucking business. Trucking companies stopped hiring non-domiciled CDL drivers. They are afraid, worried about what will happen to them on the road if they are stopped so that ICE doesn't take them away. And yes, the number of drivers who are citizens has increased. They may not always be safe drivers, but now companies are trying to hire more drivers who are citizens of this country. Well, this law is not fully established yet. It's still at some unclear level. Some say one thing, others say another.
But there's a lot of fear.
A lot of fear, yes, a lot of fear.
Yes, it has been temporarily suspended, this law, but
At the time of recording this interview.
at the time of recording, because it's possible it will be restored, knowing Trump and his policies, most likely everything will return. But let's hope that won't happen, of course, fingers crossed. And Olesea, for such drivers who, well, such unfortunate ones, they have non-domiciled CDL, they don't have citizenship, they don't have residency here, a green card or citizenship, what do you recommend they do now?
Oh, this is such a sensitive question. Well, I consider it from my side. If my husband, for example, were in such a situation, I don't know if I would allow him.
And your husband is a driver, right? A CDL driver.
A CDL driver, yes. I'm not sure if I would. If I let him go out on the road, I would worry about him because there are so many cases where drivers are taken right from the road, taken to detention centers, and then nothing is heard from them. And it's very. Money is good, of course, but the safety of a loved one is very important.
Yes, undoubtedly. Yes, and let's hope that everything
Works out.
yes, works out.
Returning to the question of changing laws, if you had the opportunity to change something in the legislation or introduce a new requirement or change some requirements or change some process that currently exists, you are trying to introduce such an initiative, it is related to hiring a driver for work. Could you talk about it?
Speaking globally, what would I change? I would again ban all outsourcing. I would bring all outsourcing here to the United States. Money should be earned. American money should be earned by people who live in the United States. I don't know if this is right or not, but that's what I think. I live in this country. I work in this country.
Pay taxes in this country.
I pay taxes.
Not small.
Not small indeed. Therefore, I would introduce such a principle. As for our internal work, we face a huge problem in filling out applications when a driver comes to work, especially the part that concerns employment verification. According to DOT rules, a driver must necessarily provide 10 years of their employment history, and we must verify their previous employment for the last 3 years if they worked in the trucking industry as a CDL driver. I would recommend that the FMCSA create a unified database and require DOT companies to enter drivers who have worked for their company into this database, specifying the period of employment. So when a driver comes to us, I open this database and find out where he worked and for how long. And it would make the work of safety in this area easier because previous employment verification is really important. Sometimes in their record, we don't see what previous companies he worked for can tell us. And we had cases when companies called us and said, we received an official request from you, but what we will tell you, we don't want to indicate in the document, but this is a very problematic driver. And they mentioned some cases. What this driver did at their company. We then called the owner and informed him about it. And in this particular case, the owner was very careless, said, well, okay, the driver told me about these incidents, everything is fine there. And a week later, he called and said, girls, I'm firing him. He is really a very difficult and unpleasant person. So if he had listened to the previous company, he would have avoided these problems with this driver. And so this aspect is currently quite shaky, probably not fully refined. I would like FMCSA and DOT to improve this process.
So that there is a centralized system that automatically reports where the driver worked, how much experience they had. Olesea, you said that some companies, they are afraid on paper, on this previous employment verification paper, where they write experience, where the driver worked, confirmation of work. They are afraid to write some additional things, for example, that he stole a truck or that he is a dishonest person or that he owes us a lot of money. So in these cases, why do they do that?
Well, they understand that everything they write in official documents must be backed up by some evidence. And if they think they don't have enough evidence, they fear that the driver, upon learning this information, might sue them. That's why they don't mention it. But still, they don't want to just overlook this fact about the driver and let him move on to another company where he might behave the same way as he did in their company. That's why they call us and report it. I don't know if it's right, but often we listen to companies, and what they say is later proven to be true.
Yes, many times, by the way.
And in general, there should be such collegiality among trucking companies. Yes, if a bad driver left you and you received an employment verification, it's better to warn them. It's our duty to warn the company. It's like if we go back to drugs and alcohol, drivers come to us who have a closed follow-up program. He was once caught using drugs and alcohol. He completed this follow-up program. It's closed, but we know how this follow-up program should be closed according to the law. And this, by the way, is also about involvement. And we see that it is closed incorrectly. And I always tell my team, we can't overlook this. We are part of the DOT system. We are part of the law. We can't overlook this. We have to deal with it. And we've had cases where we reopened follow-up programs and continued. The driver continued this program, and we closed it according to the law. You see, that is when safety is involved. This system is like a chain. Everything absolutely has to work in tandem. And if some part of the chain breaks, everything falls apart. Therefore, if a bad driver leaves you, you should inform the company he left for, thereby preventing this driver from being hired so that he ultimately ends up without a job. You understand? Another thing I would like to change is to revoke the driving rights of drivers who were caught using drugs and alcohol for some time.
So what happens, for example, if a driver uses drugs or drinks beer while waiting for cargo and he gets caught and gets a violation for alcohol? Does his license get taken away right away?
Now they're taking it now. Yes, they've tightened the law.
Didn't they take it before?
No, they didn't. He drove. Yes, it was just a violation. He drove and no one even knew about it. Now they take away the license for some time, but only until he completes the program himself, retakes the return to duty test, is reported to the clearinghouse, he becomes prohibited again, and after that, his license is reinstated. And he continues to drive, and this follow-up program continues. Most of the time, I don't know why, probably because people don't study the laws. These programs are closed incorrectly.
And how long does this follow-up program process take? I mean, when the driver has already violated, he significantly misbehaved, his license was taken away, and now he has to go through all these steps to get his license back. That is, he needs to see a SAP consultant. So this is a person who works with alcoholics, like the 12-step program for alcoholics. It's the same, very similar to drivers. That is, the driver must go through this SAP, substance abuse professional specialist, and after that, renew his license. How long does this process take?
From the moment he became positive for drugs and alcohol, it's about, if such a driver comes to us, even if we don't take him, we are obliged to find him a SAP doctor. Even if we reject him, according to DOT, we are obliged, we help him find a doctor. He found a doctor. This generally doesn't take long, a week or two at most. Then his follow-up program, according to DOT, should take a year, not less than a year.
So this driver needs to be tested more, right?
Yes, there should be no fewer than 6 tests. And up to 5 years. But you know, sometimes even SAP doctors don't know about this and their schedule doesn't match DOT rules. Yes. Of course, we're surprised, but we won't argue with the doctors.
Yes.
And what are the consequences? Perhaps some companies, even safety managers, might think, well, if it's not properly closed, it's fine if there's no audit. But if there is, we'll just say it was a mistake.
It's completely responsibility of the safety managers, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, I would completely revoke the licenses of such drivers. Simply turning a blind eye to drivers who use substances on the road and are unsafe is not an option. We must not forget that we are also on these roads, and these drivers are driving next to us. Those who smoke, use drugs, and drink, posing a threat to us, our loved ones, and the entire country.
To our children.
To our children, yes, to the whole country. And when we close the follow-up program, not according to the rules, we help such drivers continue to break the law. We are part of the lawlessness. Yes, we become part of this. If this driver violates something, gets into a terrible accident, believe me, they will come to you. They will come to you, to those who improperly closed it. Driver's entire work history is brought up. And if, God forbid, he was on drugs, then they will come to you.
So these federal agents, they see all this too, right?
Of course, they see all of this. They bring it all up. They reach those companies that close follow-ups improperly. And we open such follow-ups. But generally, if a follow-up was closed improperly, it can only be opened by the company that closed it. But we directly contact the clearinghouse and we prove that it was closed improperly, and the clearinghouse opens it for us. We explain that the way it was closed for you was done illegally and you are part of this. And surely you want to comply with the laws?
To be a decent citizen.
Yes, be a decent citizen, so please comply and complete this follow-up program to the end.
Another question. So, yes, this crash happened. You say they will come to you. Well, they came, but some companies might be, as they say, audit ready. That is, they are always ready, like pioneers for an audit. What does that mean? What does it mean that the company is always ready for an audit?
Well, if they knock on your door, there are rules, first of all, not to stress, not to panic, most likely not to panic, because fear and panic are bad advisors during audits. The second rule is not to try to tweak something for the audit. This can harm the company very much. And as one DOT inspector once told us, not knowing is one thing, but deceiving, lying is completely different and much worse. Being prepared for an audit means doing everything correctly according to DOT rules, from hiring a driver to the moment he leaves the company. The same goes for trucks. You bought a truck, released it under your signs due to .mc, and handle maintenance, keep track of everything in a timely manner. And comply with the laws, implement laws into practice of the trucking company.
And do not violate, most importantly.
If they came to you, it means something went wrong.
So you've already caused quite a bit of trouble. Can you recall any interesting or funny audit stories, like when clients did something unusual? They tweaked something, for example, something that really surprised you.
In general, yes, tweaking is the last thing you should be doing, or rather shouldn't be doing at all.
I remember there was this incident with MVR. You mentioned that the driver's MVR was forged.
Yes, that happened. A company came to us asking for help with an audit and sent us, the annual MVR. And in the annual, again, we analyze everything. If a company sends an MVR, it doesn't mean we just pass it on to the auditor like a bridge. No, we open it, we analyze it, and as it turned out, we look. The medical card was issued later than the MVR was made. That is, if the MVR was in 2024, then the medical card was in 2025, for example.
Wow, that's something.
So they took his new MVR, and he didn't have a pre-employment MVR. Now I remember he didn't have a pre-employment MVR. They made him an MVR and changed the date, the issue date of the MVR. And it turned out that he joined the company in 2024, and his medical card had an issue date of 2025. Well, I mean, something like this.
Yes, they do all sorts of things.
Auditors aren't fools.
Sure, of course.
How personal is the factor in your communication with auditors? How is it best to communicate with an auditor?
How is it best to communicate with an auditor? Auditors are people too. And when we meet with the auditors, we are also, for a moment, psychologists.
I would say more than just for a moment. Because, I don't know, Olesei, if you remember, once we met with an auditor who was very upset. He was already of retirement age. We were undergoing an audit. And I want to share I don't know how funny this story is. Of course, it was very sad. But the auditor started to miss the road. He looked at some inspections we gave him and he started to miss the road. He said, I worked my whole life as a driver, a long-haul trucker, and I miss it so much. And he started crying right in front of us and we didn't know what to do.
We sat and sympathized with him.
Sympathized, yes?
Therefore, our behavior with the auditor is also very important. How do we endear the auditor to us as a person? And this can also affect the audit result. Our experience in this is also very important because we have extensive experience meeting with auditors And we know how to talk to them, how to behave with them, how not to alert them, how to maybe distract them from certain situations.
I've heard from some people, including a former auditor, that if they see a company didn't know something, they didn't have something, but they are trying, then they might be treated differently than a company that tweaked something, or they are denying that they missed something. Is that true?
Yes, situations more than once. Companies came to us, an audit came to them, and they came to us. And their company was run completely wrong. Accordingly, money was being made, but safety was absolutely not monitored, and they didn't know what it was. We fixed everything. Of course, it was done after violations, after everything, but we fixed all things, did everything according to DOTI rules. And when the audit came, they reviewed the papers and said, yes, we see that you didn't have this, but you fixed everything, and that's very good. You're doing well. You're on the right track. Keep it up. And we were even in touch with the auditor by phone. I remember it was by phone. We were in touch with the auditor, and the auditor noted such an important thing that I see your consulting company fixed everything. Please stay with them and keep it up. And the company passed a successful audit without violations, without ratings, without violations. And they became our clients.
That is the most important thing, is not to lie, not to manipulate information, but to honestly admit, yes, we don't have this, but we are working on it. We will provide it to you. We are on the right path.
Right, yes, absolutely correct. Because they can check absolutely everything. Like in the case with the driver who got a violation for English, the auditor called the second driver, talked to him, and determined that, yes, you did not break the law. A driver who knew English arrived. He can also call, I don't know, the airport, ask if this co-driver was in the country at the time he was listed in the lookbooks. Anywhere, they can check anything.
Well, it's like detective work. They investigate everything thoroughly.
Before the auditors conduct this detective work, we do this detective work ourselves. That is, we anticipate everything that the auditor might see. And we see and we prevent this.
And for this, mock audits are very useful.
Yes, mock audits.
We discover a lot of things.
Yes, mock audits. And they have become quite popular now because many companies come to us with mock audits, which wasn't the case before. And this is probably also related to the tightening of laws. And people have started to pay more attention to the safety of their company, to the safety department. And even the owners sign a contract with us for mock audits to check their safety department. And we even have cases like this, when during such mock audits, the safety departments don't write in the general chat, but send us private messages so that the owner doesn't see them, maybe to present it in a certain light, you know.
But this is not our task, we will say right away. In other words, we don't want to let the safety department down in any way. Our main goal is simply to draw the company's attention to the oversights, because as far as I understand, no matter how well the safety system is set up, no matter how qualified safety team is, some help might be needed in something. And checking one more time probably wouldn't hurt.
Yes, so your task is not like that, oh, look, this is how poorly your safety works.
No, absolutely not.
To detect, firstly, secondly, so that we, as one big team working together, eliminate these violations.
Eliminate and teach their safety how to conduct it properly according to the DOT rules.
Because even an experienced safety can, for example, either forget something or overlook something, or so anything can happen.
Of course, anything can happen, yes. As I say, the human factor cannot be cancelled.
Yes, absolutely right.
Well, probably in conclusion, one question from our subscriber in our Telegram channel. What to do if there's a problem with the broker? The broker contacted FrightGuard with the resulting consequences. Unfortunately, I will say right away, the question does not directly relate to safety, because safety deals with laws, FMCSA, DO2 rules, and FreightGuard is a private company that, again, has nothing to do with regulations or laws. They, in fact,
Separate entity.
they bear no responsibility to anyone.
But nevertheless, a very annoying organization, and many companies suffer from it.
Yes, and that's why this question often comes up for us, and that's why we will also turn to Olesei with this question.
Well, in our experience, our clients, if they found themselves in such a situation, the only way out is to negotiate with the broker. Reach out to the broker, negotiate to have it removed from FrightGuard.
Olesei, is there another way besides negotiating with the broker to remove this mark from FrightGuard? Anything else?
Well, you could also open a legal case, but that's very costly and time-consuming.
And whether it works is probably also unknown. But again, yes, you just file a lawsuit against the broker, or you can try to sue FreightGuard.
And speaking of these laws, it might be good to have legislation that supports the company too. So the broker can just block us on FrightGuard and we as a company can't really do anything about it. We won't be able to block the broker, for example.
Well, that's class action lawsuit, maybe.
Maybe, by the way, against FreightGuard. I hope FreightGuard doesn't watch this show. Olesya, and finally, what would you advise our viewers?
I would recommend hiring safe drivers.
And professional safety managers. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I think it was a very interesting conversation.
Yes, very. I think our viewers will appreciate it.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
See you next time.